All right, welcome in. This is the Coach Mark Gottfried Show and new location, and I'm excited about that. And I'm really excited today because I've got a wonderful guest who not only is a phenomenal coach, Super Bowl winning coach, two-time NFL Coach of the Year, but just a wonderful, wonderful person. I think that's more important than anything. So welcome in. Bruce Arians, the Tampa Bay Super Bowl winning coach. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. How's everybody doing?
It's great. So, Coach, let's jump in. Let's go back. And you played college football at Virginia Tech. You were a quarterback, but when did you get the bug? All of us coaches, like once we get the bug, it's hard to get rid of the bug to coach. And like for you, when was that process kind of starting for you that you really wanted to coach?
Yeah, I think for me, it was as a young guy. Everybody that I looked up to as a kid was named Coach. I didn't know it was some dad's dad giving his time, to come out to practice. But I thought I respected all the coaches. I thought high school teachers were rich. I said, damn, I'm going to be a teacher and a coach when I grow up. And when I was a little kid, I'd go over to York high basketball and football practice and just hang around and watch them and tackling the dummies. And but it was always something I wanted to be. So, when I went to Virginia Tech, I was a health, physical education, recreation major. And I started getting my master's in counseling and ended up having a long journey in college and NFL coaching.
Bruce, I coached 35 years and you've had a lifetime of coaching. And, when you step out of coaching, you look back a little bit, and I do myself. And, there's certain things you miss about it. The jobs are way harder than most people realize. And, a lot of times things are out of our control. We don't control everything like people seem to think we do. But, now that you've kind of been in and out, you look back, Coach, and some of the things maybe that, at this point you might miss on a daily basis. Just what about that coaching profession? Yeah,
the relationships, man, the locker room, the coach's locker room, just shooting the shit with the guys after practice every day, having a drink after practice and talking about it and building that team each year. I don't miss the daily grind of the season or the 4 hours standing on the sideline, but I do miss the guys, especially the coaches and the players. Those relationships, when you build them over that much time, it's just amazing. That's what the profession's all about.
Coach, was there ever a guy that you coached that we've all had them that, some guys are easy to coach. You tell them stand in the corner and hop on one leg for 10 minutes, they'll do it. And other guys, it's a little bit of a chore and there's got to be some buy-in and all that. But if you look back over your career, maybe somebody that wasn't not the easiest to coach. I don't want to say that, but someone where you really had to dive in there and kind of convince them of what you're doing and your philosophy and how the things that you wanted to teach them. Was there anybody like that for you along the way that you look back and say, yeah, I think I really had an impact on that guy?
Yeah, I think, I was very, very fortunate to be around some great quarterbacks. Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer, Tom Brady, Andrew Luck. God made those guys, God and their parents. But Kelly Holcomb was a guy that I coached that I took a ton of. Every time Kelly got his opportunity, he'd throw for 400. He'd go in and he'd win a game for us. And as I always said, I can't take any credit for those other guys, but I might have had a little bit of hand in him, and he's one of my favorite guys I've ever coached and still real close today.
You're a humble, Coach, because you're saying you can't take a lot of credit from those guys, but you definitely, coaches, I've always felt like, I look back on my career, even coaching good players, like I've had really good players that maybe became the ACC Player of the Year or the SEC Player of the Year. I do still believe, and I'm not trying to take anything away, but kind of the way we nurtured them and allowed them to do what they do best, like to bring out the best in them. That's still a skill. Like, obviously you're being very humble, but some of those guys you mentioned, obviously they're some of the all-time greats, but just bringing that out of them, how do you think you kind of did that? What was kind of the secret sauce for you?
Yeah, each guy had a different hot button. And it was, for Peyton, you couldn't give him enough information. If I had an hour meeting, I better have 2.5 hours worth of stuff. I felt bad for those backup quarterbacks because they couldn't take notes that fast. But for him, he had to have, and Tom was saying, they had to have every rock unturned before we got to Sunday. What if this happens? How are we going to handle this? How are we going to, and then Ben was just the opposite. Hey, just let me play, man. And he studied his ass off. He knew exactly what he was doing. He's one of the few guys I just turn it over, let him call plays. We'd go no huddle, and I'd turn it over to him. And I haven't done that with a lot of guys. And I think he used to sabotage. We'd have a little bet who would score first, me calling plays or him. I think he sabotaged me on the first drive a couple of times. But no, Tim Couch was another guy that Timmy was a hell of a player. Just got broken up his first 3 years, and couldn't. But he was never a bust. I mean, he was hell. He took Browns to the playoffs, broke his leg in the last game. Then comes Kelly throwing for 420 yards against the Steelers.
Yeah.
But it was preparation. I think is still the thing with those guys. And I'd said this many times. If a player looks in the eye and says, "How you making me better?" If you can tell them, you got them. If you can't tell them, you ain't got no business being in the room. And so when I first hired the first woman to be in the NFL, all right, you got to be able to answer that question. And I put it with a young linebacker coach who had just got done playing with us, and was like, how you going to make me better? And laid it out. Here's what you're doing wrong in this situation. Here's what you're wrong. And so I always thought it never mattered where it came from, just make me better.
Coach, what do you think, and I look back again on my coach, what do you think separates good players from great players? Like, there are a lot of good players. There's a lot of good players out there. And we've all coached some bad ones too, but good players. Mm-hmm. But then there's that great player. What separates the good from the great?
I think the hatred of losing. When I look at Peyton and Tom, Ben, I don't care if it's golf, shooting pool. They hate losing, and they're gonna will themselves on everybody else around them to make sure we win no matter what. And they want the ball. They give me the damn ball, I'll win the game. Not all guys have that. And it's funny. I was playing in the Phoenix Open with Justin Thomas, and he said, "Coach, what makes the great guys?" I said, "Well, you just came off the driving range. Were you practicing to win? Were you hitting shots out there to win, or were you just warming up?" Because I bet you 50 to 80% of those guys were just warming up. And there's about 15 or 20 of them that are warming up to win this damn tournament. And he thought about it and said, "Oh, yeah, that's." I said, "It's all about your mindset and your preparation. When you're on that practice tee, you're hitting shots you're thinking about out on the course." And I think the great players never go into a game surprised. Great players, I expected that. And Coach Bryant used to always say, expect the unexpected. And if you can get your guys to where they're not surprised by a situation, especially, I look at the NFL today, situational football has gotten terrible. And, it's just gotten awful. The clock management, and it's like, you're not teaching these guys to be prepared for that moment. Don't be surprised it's 5 seconds left and you got to do this. What are we going to do? Well, you should have already taught about that, and I give Chuck Pagano a lot of credit. He was one of the guys I worked with that was super prepared with different scenarios in practice, and they had done it in Baltimore. We did it all the time. And a little thing like scouting report on who's officiating the game this week. Just DBs, don't touch them. Oh, you can grab them, throw them down this week. You ain't gonna call shit, And but just have everybody prepared for that moment when the unexpected happens.
Coach, I always found too, and I love your answer. I always found too that guys that want to be coached, the guys that weren't afraid if I told them the truth, they wanted the truth. They almost were hungry for the truth. Some guys I coached, they don't want the truth. They don't want it. But I always felt the guys that were able to take those big steps, all of a sudden you're seeing a big step in improvement. Those were the guys that they wanted the truth, and they wanted you to coach them hard. It was okay. I get it. It's like, it's not personal. I get it. Did you find that as well?
Totally. Yeah. I one of the first things I always tell our guys, That's the last thing Coach Bryant told me when I left to become the head coach at Temple. Coach him hard and hug him later. If it ain't right, I'm going to correct it. It's not personal. You don't stink. Your football sucks. You're a hell of a guy. But your football sucks right now. We got to fix this. And I think, especially with quarterbacks, you got to have a trust relationship. Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what the hell you saw. Why the hell did you throw that ball over there? That wasn't what we talked about. Well, I thought it was this. Okay. That's what you saw. We're good. Don't make some shit up and try to baffle me with it, And like you said, the great ones, they can't get enough answers because they got all the questions. The guys that don't want to be great, they got to ask.
Isn't that amazing? And Coach, talk a little bit about this one because you were around some great coaches, and in the NFL, you didn't become a head coach till later in life, and you took the Temple job, years and years ago, which is kind of one of them jobs in my view. I used to say this in basketball. There are some programs that it's kind of a bad job. They haven't ever won and probably never will win. I mean, and for a lot of reasons. Maybe there's not enough commitment from the administration. They're not putting the money in, facilities, whatever it is. And you look back on that, and even though you didn't have great success record-wise, was that a great learning experience for you for later on in your career?
Totally. Yeah. When I could have stayed at Alabama and coached the quarterbacks with Ray Perkins. And, Coach Bryant, I had a couple conversations. He said, well, you want to be a head coach? I said, that's what I want to be. He said, well, I'll be honest, you might not ever get another chance. That's just the way this business is. And so, yeah, I was 30, thought I knew everything, but I was smart enough to hire Paul Davis. And Paul had been the head coach at Mississippi State back in '61. He was 63 years old. And I said, look, Coach, you come up to Philly with me. I can double your insurance. Your retirement. They're going to match $2 to $1 for your TIAA credit. Give me 3 years and teach this defense I want to bring back to a young guy. And it's the old Auburn split six. He was Shug Jordan's defensive coordinator for all those years, and he and Coach Bryant were super tight. And he was on the Alabama staff with us at the time, and we talked football all the time. And he was the guy I could close the door and just bitch, man. And it wasn't going nowhere. You can't bitch to a young coach. He go home and tell his wife, and then that is all over the place. But you can take an old coach way, then you can bitch to him. And when I got the opportunity to go to Arizona as head coach, the first guy I called was Tom Moore. I said, hey, Coach, I know you still want to coach. And Tom Pratt coached Buck Buchanan in Super Bowl I. So I had a guy on defense and a guy on offense, and they were just senior assistants teaching young coaches. But every night we'd have a cocktail and talk about what we got to do the next day to get better. And I think too many young coaches today won't do that. They won't bring that veteran in to help them. And it just that set of eyes that's been there and done it, and they got no qualms about trying to get your job. They just want to see you succeed. And I think more young coaches, my advice to all of them whenever they call me is get a veteran that you can trust, that you can bitch to.
So true. Coach, talk about, obviously, I went to school at Alabama, played basketball there, and later was the head coach there for 11 years. But and I came right after Bear Bryant. But, in meeting him one time, his stature, like size and just his voice, and, it's Bear Bryant, for God's sake.
Yeah.
It's one of them, there's very few people in life you kind of just, it's like when you meet them, you're just like, whoa, this is very intimidating. I was very young then, but talk about working for the Bear, because, obviously what Nick has done is amazing at Alabama, but for years and years, Bear Bryant was the standard, period. That's it.
Coach was a master of personnel. On and off the field. And people don't realize, even in the Liberty Bowl, he substituted every single player that went in that game. We played 66 guys. Assistant coach didn't dare send a player in the game. Coach, that was his baby, boy. And he said, I'm starting so-and-so this week. I was young and cocky. I said, Coach, so-and-so's better. You coach him, I'll line him up. I'd argue. Hey, boy, I told you, you coach him, I'll line him up. I said, okay, Coach, all right. And we're playing Kentucky. And it's late in the game. We're supposed to be blowing Kentucky out. We're down 6, I think. We got the ball on the 2-yard line with about 3 minutes left in the game. He puts in the 4th-string running backs. I'm going crazy in the press box. Like, well, what are we doing, Mal? Mal Morris, Mal's the offensive coordinator. Just hold on. One makes a great block. One makes a one-handed catch. All of a sudden, we're out to the 20. Here come the Stallions in. We score in about 5 plays. Never, ever question him again. He was just amazing. But he groomed me in a way I needed to be groomed because I was cocky as hell, thought I knew everything. And we had just beaten Alabama at Mississippi State for the first time in 45 years when I came over and in the spring and replaced a very good friend in Perry Willis. But we'd grade that film. And he'd say, hey, Bobby, how did receivers play? Good. How did the line play? How did running backs play? I said, Coach, no fumbles. We had 300-some yards rushing. You even watch the goddamn film? I don't think you even watched the damn film. You know how to grade a film? Boy, I'd just be steaming. I just said, yes, sir. As soon as that meeting was over, I walk in, Coach, how you want these guys graded? You want letter graded? You're doing fine. You're doing all right. This goes on for about 3 weeks, boys. Finally, I said, Coach, obviously I ain't doing fine. How the hell you want these guys graded? Never did it again. He was just testing to see if I was going to come back in that office every week and ask him what he wanted. And it was a great, great relationship. I mean, I was only with him 2 years and learned so much about how to deal with people, you know. And secretary, he could walk by and know she was having a bad day and say something, just lift her right up, you know. And feet wouldn't touch the floor. And just he had that way about him.
It's amazing. You know, when Mike DuBose was coaching there and they got fired and I was the head basketball coach, but I remember Joe Kynes was our defensive coordinator at the time, and I'd gotten to know all the football coaches really well, but I remember Joe saying to me one time, he said, Coach, don't ever forget, coaching's a great profession, but it's a bad business. What's your thoughts on that comment?
That's a damn good one. I know Joe very well. That is a good one. I mean, it really is. I don't think there's a better profession that builds relationships that last forever. Yeah. Now, the problem is you're going to have to be bouncing around. I only moved my wife 20 times, you know, in 47 years. So it wasn't a really good track record. But especially my daughter, you know, that's the bad thing, too. Football coaches, every year it's Christmas time when you get fired. Mm-hmm. And 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, I had to go in. As soon as I walked in the room, she said, we're moving again. I said, yep. And that's the hard part. My son got lucky. He got to go to Starkville High. They won 30 straight, 2 state championships, went off to college. And she was the one that bounced around, but stayed at the University of Alabama, graduated, and is doing great.
Coach, I look back on your career, and we've all been through it, or most of us have, but you know, there's a lot of highs, there's great moments, but then there's some tough times, like when you know, and I've been fired, and it's no fun, and you know, it happens in life. It happens in all walks of life, not just coaching. But like when those tough times hit for you, you know, the resilience that you had to just kind of get right back on the saddle and go again. I mean, some people struggle with that. You know, they struggle, and they can't kind of overcome tough times. Like for you, how was that for you? I'm sure you've had them, and you know, we've all had them. But when you're dealing with that, how did you deal with that?
It depends a lot on my wife. You know, she's the rock. I mean, when you start moving those kids, 1st, 2nd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, somebody's got to be really, really strong in the family. And it was her. Because as a coach, I'm looking for that next job and fighting my ass off to get the next job. And then I leave, you know, and then they would move. We'd always try to get them in the spring so they could have friends for the summer. But yeah, those times, and there were 2 times when I thought I was out of the business. You know, when I got fired at Temple, I was 36 and had 6 years head coach. Nobody going to touch me in college. You know, I was too much of a threat. But I got the last job in the NFL, you know. And then again at Mississippi State, I resigned, and some things did happen that weren't supposed to happen. And it's late in March, and there's no jobs. I'm like, whoa, what am I going to do? And hear about a job that might happen. Call a friend. Oh, yeah, I'll call him right now. The head coach, Joe Bugle, called me back and said, look, I can't hire you, but I just hired this guy. Here who it is. I called Jim Moore on the spot, and Jim, who I knew already down at the Saints, hell, he's still in his office. How the hell? I said, Coach, I don't have a job. That's how I know. And he said, you don't have a job? So I told him what happened, and he's like, can you be here tomorrow? So I could walk tomorrow to New Orleans, I promise. And so those were the times where you're sitting in the dark. And Carl Smith and I always laugh all the time because, you get there, you put the shades down, you sit in the house, and it's depressing because you make yourself depressed when you're looking at Sports Center, like you can't find any information out on. And I would say, Tater, y'all pulled me out of the dark, boy. Jim, you pulled me out of the dark. I love Jim Moore to death for that reason.
Isn't that great? Coach, talk about the guys in the NFL. We talked about Bear Bryant and some others, but talk about some of the guys, because you were an assistant coach before you became a head coach for some really good coaches, some highly successful guys that had done it a long time and still doing it. But, just the guys you worked for and what you learned and, how that process was for you, because I'm sure it shaped you as you became then a head coach at Arizona later in life.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I had the great privilege of being on Marty Schottenheimer's first staff out in Kansas City and watched he and Carl Peterson turn that whole franchise around. We maybe had been selling 25,000 season tickets that year when we got there. And, just seeing how they built the team, drafting Derek Thomas and the guys that we had on that football team. And it was funny because I think it's at North Missouri University. Back then they were called the Braves, and they came in and did their national anthem, and they would do the chop. Nobody else did that except for Florida State. And all of a sudden, Carl started bringing that band back, and then as the season ticket, the stadium got full. That's how the chop got started in Kansas City. And now it's legendary, right? But to be a part of Marty's staff, and Marty was a grinder, boy. Now, Marty, you were in the office all the time. And one thing I took from it was I'm missing so much of my kids' time that isn't necessary. If I ever get an opportunity, I would never hold my coaches to this timetable. Then going to work for Jim Moore, who's very similar, both tough, physical, defensive coaches. Jim had a little better schedule than I thought, and working with Jim in New Orleans when it all went down south, and then watch him resurrect his career with Bill Polian in Indianapolis and drafting Peyton, and being part of that process of going 3-13, but being positive every day because we saw Peyton get better and better and better, and everything around us getting better each day. We knew we were going to build the defense. Next year we're 13-3, and to see those turnarounds that those guys, they were. The one thing about it, when you walked in your office, you were getting the truth, brother. They weren't going to sugarcoat it. You're going to get the truth. And I think when I became a head coach and always felt that way, if you come in my office, don't come in there looking for a pat on the back. You're going to get the truth. And like you said earlier, sometimes guys cannot handle the truth, but I can't sugarcoat it. And this is the way it is. And but I think they respect you for so much for that. And those two guys were really, really super organized. Then working with Chuck Pagano, dear friend, when we had been together in Cleveland when he was a secondary coach, and so Chuck had a great way of telling stories and communicating to the team, totally different than me. But his attention to detail on those situational football we talked about earlier was something I really learned a lot from. And then we continued at that year. I was never the head coach there. I was just, when Chuck got sick, I decided if we went for it on fourth down, he gave a shitty speech on Saturday night. But we dressed his locker. He dressed in his lockers. Nobody sat in his seat. We never turned the light off in his office that year until he came back from leukemia. And that season is the fairy tale season of all 47 years. It really is. I mean, I don't get to be a head coach unless Chuck gets sick. And so it's just crazy. But to see him get better, and it's actually Christmas Eve, I sat in my car and the light was off in his office for the first time. I just sat out there and cried like a baby.
You know, the thing people sometimes don't realize too, there's a lot of people that watch football, basketball, baseball, but they don't understand the relationships that we built with each other, our coaches, really our coaches. You know, you're in the trenches, like you're in the trenches with guys. And when you come across somebody like that, or maybe some other people in your lifetime, there's relationships there's bonds that are built that last a lifetime, because you're in the foxhole together. And, you know, sometimes we probably, you know, come across guys that aren't very loyal, but when you get some good people that really trust in one another, great things seem to always happen. Would you agree?
Totally. I you know, hiring a staff to me is the most important thing. And I can't imagine being successful having someone else hire my staff. And it's happening more and more now, especially in the NFL. They're hiring a coordinator to be the head coach. All right, we'll take care of this side of the ball for you. We'll hire this guy over here. He doesn't even know him. You know, I can't imagine going to work. And I did it for 1 year. I went to work with guys I'd never worked with before. And it was the only time I hated going to the office. And, you know, it was like, it was the worst decision ever. But trust, loyalty, and respect are three words that we built our entire organization on. You know, you can't trust anybody till you look in the mirror and trust that guy. And being able to trust the guys around you to come to work together and then be loyal to the cause. And loyalty is something my father instilled in me a long, long time ago. And some people say I'm too loyal to a fault, but that's a great thing for me. Mm-hmm. And then respect the process of going to work every day. Mm-hmm. Respecting people is one thing, but respect the process of coming to work and getting your work done. My dad worked 7 days a week in the factory, and he gave him everything he had every day. And that's all you can do. And so, yeah, that's kind of it. And our staff bought into it. My wife is one of those wives that was like, she was going to take care of, make sure all the other wives are okay. I had a chance to move out of Temple a year early, and it was after the season. I couldn't leave 12 guys and their families in the lurch, you know, not for my family, you know, just, you know, we all went down the next year, but it was like, okay, I can't do that to those guys. Just Coach Bryant, one thing, he never fired a coach. Now he might move you over to a better job, move you up somewhere, but take pride in the fact he never fired a coach.
You know, Coach, I go back and I'm thinking about, you know, when I was young, you talking about your father. My father taught me how important loyalty was too, and he was a coach. He was a small college coach, and then later became an athletic director. He's a Division I coach at Southern Illinois for a while. But you know, when you're a head coach and you have assistants, and I was an assistant at UCLA for a good while. I didn't agree with everything the head coach did, but I wasn't going anywhere to tell anybody if I didn't agree. And sometimes, you know, a lot of young coaches and some older coaches, they just miss it on the loyalty part. Now, They have their own ideas. I get it. And you can come in my office and we can talk about anything you want to talk about. But I'm sure at times, maybe here and there, either you were working alongside of some guys that maybe didn't really understand loyalty, or maybe as a head coach. And those are tough ones, because for me, I wasn't putting up with that one. If we're going to be together, we together. And if I'm the head coach, I make the decisions, and you might not agree, but we're still together. And that's my job as the head coach. And I'm sure you had to deal with that probably as an assistant and probably as a head coach as well.
Yeah, both. Just like I said, we have one rule: no bitching. Bitching is complaining to somebody that can't fix the problem. All right, you're more than welcome to come in here and give me any idea you want, argue about any situation you want to argue about, and we'll move on if it makes us better. But if you're over there in somebody else's office doing it, now we got a problem. And if somebody's in your office doing it, you better damn sure tell me. Yeah, because that's almost as bad. Listening to him bitch and not tell me is almost as bad as him bitching. And but it's like, the same thing with players. You know, hey guys, we could talk all we want in that locker room. Bring it to me. I was always one of those guys. First thing I would tell them, it's not my team, it's your team. We'll be as good as you want to be. And I'd grab the leaders, all the veteran guys, bring them in my office, and then either one by one, meet with them or collectively and say, look, it's your locker room. I'm not going in the locker room. If I go in the locker room, it's because I cussed somebody out really bad that day. I want to make sure he's okay. But you run this football team. We're going to be as good as you collectively want to be and accountable to each other.
Coach, you had the stint there in Indianapolis, as a head coach, but you're a guy. A lot of guys have become head coaches at a lot of younger age than you did, and you were a little bit older. And were you just kind of biting at the bit for that? Like, okay, there's got to be an opportunity for me. Were you talk about it a little bit about that, like your mindset when you get hired at Arizona as the head coach?
Yeah, I'd given up on the idea. When Super Bowl 43 with the Steelers, we beat the Cardinals in that 2-minute drive, and Ben Roethlisberger was just unbelievable. Hit Santonio Holmes for the touchdown. Every offensive coordinator from Steelers always got a head coaching job that won the Super Bowl. I didn't get a call, not an interview. It's like, okay, it's not in the cards for me. It wasn't in the cards for Howard Mudd or Tom Moore, two of the greatest assistants I've ever seen. And so took the job with the Colts, and then Chuck gets sick and end up being coach of the year. And all of a sudden I got 7 interviews. And I took the first one, and 5 of them dropped me that night. I thought I was going to Chicago, and all of a sudden they hired Mark Trestman. I came down the next morning. My agent said, "Well, we're not going those other 5. We're going to Arizona." I said, "Nope," because Kenny Wisenhunt was a dear friend of mine, and Russ Grimm and all the guys. We had won a Super Bowls together in Pittsburgh, and I was going to have to go out there and try to take Kenny's place and fire 5 friends because I already had put a staff together. And I was like, I'm not taking that interview. I'm going to go back to Indianapolis. And God bless him, Brownie said, no, you got to take this interview. So I called Kenny that morning, and Kenny said, no, man, you deserve a shot. You and Michael get along great. And those guys understand, and they did, so really Kenny was the one who taught me to take the interview, and went out and met with Michael, and everything went great. And, had already put a staff together, and in case we got a job. And it was a very interesting interview, because they had a good defense, and it was, like I said earlier, they wanted me to keep one of the guys as the coordinator. And we're going to start anew. We're not going to have any leftover ideas. We're going to do it this way. And Michael bought in, and Steve Keim, God bless him. I used to get on him because he'd always say he's from Harrisburg, he's from York County. And so we lived about 15 miles apart. And I grew up in the city, he grew up in the county. But it's like a little brother to me. And, it just hit it great. And Jason Light, we had just a great front office, and were able to put together a pretty good squad quickly, mainly because Steve pulled off that trade for Carson Palmer.
Yep.
And we had a great defense. And then Todd Bowles took over the defense, and then Carson just made us legit right off the bat, and we start winning, and winning kind of beats everything. It's a little bit harder when you're grinding it out. You get a shitty team and you're going 5-7 or whatever. Then you maybe have that one good year, but we almost snuck in the playoffs the first year, and then it lost Todd, and he got the head job at the Jets, and then James Betcher, who's a hell of a young coach, took over the defense, and just a great time in Arizona. But again, first 2 guys I hired, one was 80 and the other was 82. And those are my guys, man. Tom Pratt and Tom Moore.
Steve Keim, who's a great friend of mine, who was a general manager, became the general manager, just did a great job. But we've talked about this, and I've talked about this with other coaches. And I remember a story, Coach. I was assistant coach at UCLA, my graduate assistant, very first year in coaching. I asked our head coach, Jim Herrick, what's the difference between being an assistant coach and a head coach? And I wanted this big, long, elaborate, dissertation of an answer. And he looked right at me, and his eyes penetrated in me and said, "It's lonely." And it never left me, and I became a head coach for a lot of years. But for you, you go from being an assistant, and you had different periods where you're a head coach, but does that resonate a little bit? That because it does get lonely, when you're the head coach. It's a little different than being in that group of the assistants.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're sitting in that seat. So for you, does that resonate?
Oh, totally, totally. Especially when you bring some young assistants. Like I was the coordinator, I brought a couple of young assistants with me. And, I'd take them out every Friday or whatever. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're going out Friday. And the guys go, you're the head coach now. I was, I know, we're still going Friday, aren't we? And so after a while, it's like you feel them gravitate away, and you had to, so it was me and Steve Keim and Jason Light. And, so it's like, okay, we got more business done at a little place called the Living Room than we got ever done at the office.
Coach, you had to deal, we all do it, but you had to deal with, the media, your local and all that. But, in the NFL is so big, there's nothing like the NFL as far as America pays attention, a sport. Like I love baseball, I'm a basketball guy, but the NFL it's another level. And the national media and, you're dealing, with a lot of people in my view and, call it what it is. Some of them are really good and they're very knowledgeable. A lot of them aren't very knowledgeable at all. They don't know this from that. They really don't. And you're dealing with that all the time. Tough loss. You know why you lost. You get it. This happened, that happened, or whatever. But how did you deal with that? Because that's an art in my view, and I wasn't the best at it because I got a little short fused and my patience wasn't great. And sometimes, I'd say some things and get guys pretty grumpy. But dealing with the media, talk about that a little bit and from your perspective.
Yeah, I always felt like they had a job to do. All right. And if I could help you do your job, everything will be fair. All right. Let's just be fair about it. Whatever you need, I'm going to tell you. But I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. I'm not going to, like I say, I'm not sugarcoating anything. But now today is so different because it's clickbait city. You might say something and you're reading, it's totally different. In that article they wrote, like, that's not what I said, and then they don't care. Today you got so many people just writing stuff out there with no ramifications of, hey, that's totally wrong. Now the national media totally are, they're great, and just having been that 1 year with CBS and on the other side of it. Got to go in and do the questions I used to hate answering, but there was a sensitive part to it. I wouldn't ask certain questions, because I knew how touchy it were in front of other people. I might grab them on the side and ask a question. But yeah, I mean, to me, it was, you got a job to do. I got a job to do. Hey, let's just get along. And felt like especially in Arizona, we had a great rapport with all the guys. And, I leaned on them a lot too to help our foundation, and get the word out when we're trying to raise money for the foundation and do the things to help the kids. Same thing in Tampa. Just Rick Stroud and all those guys down there, just great guys, and the people out in Arizona are super. Got Kent Summers and everybody out there. But like you said, the national media it's 24/7 now. I mean, with all the stuff on ESPN and Fox and everywhere else. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk, you can talk all damn day long, every day on something,
Talk about this one, Coach, when you were in Tampa Bay. So, and, we get it now. When I get good players, I got a little bit better chance to win. I got a better chance to be a better coach. I can promise you that. Guys with a bunch of bad players, they may win a couple games here and there, but usually at the end of the day, we all need some players. So you're in Tampa Bay, and here comes the opportunity before you get him, but the opportunity starts to bubble up that, hey, we might have a chance to get number 12 from the Patriots. And he ain't bad. He's not a bad player. He might help us just a little bit. So talk about a little bit like leading up to that and the excitement or however that came about there with Tom Brady.
Yeah, going into the season, took the Tampa job for Jason Light, obviously the general manager. But Jameis Winston, I had him in the 10th grade on our football camp. And I knew the legend of Jay Boo, and I love the kid. So, when I and again, I wasn't itching to get back into coaching. But sometimes there are signs. And like 18 of my coaches from Arizona were available. Like, that's a sign. Okay. And I had groomed Byron Leftwich to take over as offensive coordinator. So everything worked out. And, Jameis was same as he is right now. He'd light you up and then he'll throw that pick. So at the end of the season, we said, okay, what's behind door number 2? We can win with Jameis, but what's behind door number 2? Not thinking it was ever be Tom Brady. But that year you had Phillip Rivers, Tom, somebody else. There were some decent quarterbacks out there, veteran quarterbacks that were going to be free agents. And so we broke them all down. Every throw that for the last 2 years, ranked them the way we had them, said Tom is still number 1. Tom can make every throw in the book. Still not believing he's going to ever get out of New England. But when he did, it was like, okay, Jason make a call to his agent, and the agent's like, hey, we're glad you called. He knew everything about us. Tommy does his homework now. That's he grilled us like Peyton did in his interview at the combine. When we're going ready for the draft. But Tom knew everything. He knew all the players. He knew the coaching staff. He played against us for so many years. Loved the offense and saw the receivers that we had, and everything kind of fit for him. East Coast, Florida, being close to Jack up in New York City, and we knew we'd have a chance. And every time I talked to him, he'd get more and more excited. And so I said, I think this is going to work out. And lo and behold, it did. It just crazy. And then COVID hits, and we can't practice. We can't even meet, And I always tell a funny story. My wife met Tom Brady for the first time on the stage at the Super Bowl.
How about that?
We couldn't talk to each other that year. We couldn't go out, and so it was kind of crazy. And but yeah, Tommy brought that will to win to a team that was very talented. They thought they were, but they weren't sure. Mm-hmm. And he gave them that belief. You guys are way better than we were, and then that work ethic when those great ones go to practice, it's a game every day. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's game speed. Hey, you're not running around full speed. Why the hell are you out here? And, I'd be coaching a young player. Hey, when you're coming out of the break, pump your arms. Your arms are going dead. Tom throws the ball, runs over to the receiver. Hey, man, I'm expecting you to come out of your break with your arms running. Okay, Tom. So are you listening to who? Shit. Hey, Tommy, you go tell this guy this, will you, please? He might listen to you too. But he had that charisma and he had that leadership. Then getting Gronk to come in was icing on the cake. And they got a security blanket to put with those other guys. And it wasn't the easiest of seasons. We were 7-5 and had to win them all.
That's right.
And because we were just learning everything on the fly. We didn't have any preseason games. We actually scrimmaged in the stadium so Tom could get in the stadium before he ever played the first game. I'm holding my breath because we're tackling each other, which we don't do in the NFL very often except for preseason game. And but it's things we had to do that year that we'd never done before. And so, yeah, to win it all with all that craziness that went on that year, being in empty stadiums, nothing's weirder than to roll into the Meadowlands on Monday Night Football and it's just fog and no cars.
Yeah.
Like, what are we there? There's not a game here.
Yeah.
We're going to play the Giants in a dead stadium. I mean, it was hard to get used to.
Yeah. Coach, when you got Tom Brady, you go to bed and you wake up the next morning and I got Tom Brady now. Now, he was a little older, but he still was Tom Brady. Talk about that morning, the next morning after you got him. You got him. It's done. He's with us. You go to bed, wake up. What was that next morning like for you?
It was pretty good. It was a pretty good hangover. Because that night before was a hell of a good time. So, yeah, waking up trying to shake the cobwebs off. Is this all real? Is this real? And did we really drink that much? Because we were celebrating that hard. And yeah, it was great. And making contact with him the next day right away and getting everything started. So yeah, it was an awesome time. It really was.
Coach, you coach so many great quarterbacks, but tell me how. I'm curious on this one because I've always believed this. Great players like him and Ben and Peyton Manning and everybody's confidence seems to rise. In other words, if I'm a wide receiver and I've got a quarterback that's just not very good, and I'm not running my routes as well. I'm not, everything changes. All of a sudden, you get a great player, and all of a sudden, everybody's confidence rises. All of a sudden, because if I run my route right, he will give me the ball. It will be there. Or even the defense understands now with a guy like him. And great players, sometimes people don't understand how it factors into everything in the whole organization. Would you agree with that? Because I believe that to be true when I had the great ones, the great players play for me.
Totally. I mean, when as soon as Tom signed, I think the easiest job in the building was selling tickets. But boy, they were selling them and with a big smile on their face, and the whole building lit up. The whole organization lit up. Suite sales, everything, skyrocketing, sell out every game. So yeah, it's not just that, but to me, it's the level of practice intensity totally changes. When you have a young one that's learning, all right, he can't run a practice for you because he's just trying to get out of his own way. And the rest of the guys have to help him. Even Peyton's first year, he wasn't the guy he was his second year, but a guy like Tom comes in and you don't run the route right in practice and the ball's thrown and this guy's on your ass. Where before, it was like, that's okay, buddy. That ain't okay no more. That ain't okay anymore. All right. And I tell the story about we'd have a 2-minute drill against each other. I think it was the second one at training camp. And it was 4th down, and I said it was incomplete. We lose, the offense loses, and Tom's pissed. He throws his helmet about a field across, kicks the football across the field. Let's do it again. I said, we'll do it again in 2 days. Try to get the group ready. Man, he lifted into those guys. He grabbed them over to the side. We ain't losing no damn 2-minute drills anymore in practice. I was like, that's what I'm looking for.
There you go. How about Gronk? When you added Gronk in, because he's such a great player and he's big and got great hands. He moves. He's all those things. But and maybe the two of them together. But just the addition of Gronkowski to that team. What did that do for that team?
Well, it gave Tom a guy in the locker room right off the bat that he was comfortable with. And Tom used to make sure he'd call all the guys as soon as he came in. Hey, and they're all awestruck, especially the young ones. The rookies we draft come in. Oh, God, there's Tom Brady. And Gronk was that. What you see is what you get. I love him to death. And no one practices any harder. He'll come early. He'll stay late. He hates making mistakes. And he brought a brevity to our practices because he was not used to practicing in Florida heat. And when he's out there, there's water squashing out of his shoes, and he's about to pass out one day. And I said, man, you better get your ass in Florida shape. This ain't New England no more. He said, you ain't shitting, coach. God damn, it's hot down there. and then, he'd crack somebody up in practice, but he brought a different side of winning, because they saw the fierce competitor, but also the guy that just happy-go-lucky. And Tommy was not happy-go-lucky. He was like, we're grinding, brother. Every second we're in this building, we're grinding.
Coach, so guys that I know, and I don't know a lot of them, but I've got some good friends in the league, and I'm close with Jim and John Harbaugh. Obviously, we're related. Our grandmothers are sisters, believe it or not. But anyway, when I mention your name, when I talk to people about you, they talk about like a player's coach, like players wanted to play for you and they wanted to do well for you. That's kind of the theme I hear a lot, and it's a great. It's just wonderful for people to say that. We all got to win. We understand that, but talk about that, like how important that relationship you had with the players, because that seemed to be a thread constantly with you when people talk about you as a coach.
Yeah, I think it's because we are in it together. I think they have to know we're in it together. It's not front office coaching players upstairs, downstairs. No, I mean, I'm walking through that locker room all the time, and I had been in locker rooms like, shh, his coach is in here, man. Shh. Oh, that ain't a good locker room. We go through the Steelers locker room, everybody's, hey, yo, yeah, hey, come on, BA, do this, and it's like same way in Arizona and Tampa Bay, just great locker rooms. But it was like, I'm going to get on your ass. I'm going to make you a better player, but I love you. And don't ever forget that part. I care about you and your family. And, we always have kids day every Saturday. And everybody bring your kids, whoever's in town, mom, dad, whoever, come to practice on Saturday. And I'll never forget, Larry Fitzgerald would stay out there and tackle every kid that came to practice, and just play ball with them for an hour. And that creates a family atmosphere. I always say Eric Winston, his wife's like, God, 8 months pregnant, and they had a 2-year-old. And right in the middle of the walkthrough, the 2-year-old comes running out on the field. All right, Eric's about to shit. Oh, my God, coach is going, I blow the whistle. Hey, wait, we got 12 men on the field. 12 men on the field. Get that little guy out of here. And mom's trying to chase him. My son goes, you quit running, you're 8 months pregnant. He goes out and grabs his, dad loves this shit, man. It's okay. Eric's about ready to think I'm going to cut him, right? No, that's just the best part. And, my niece came up with their daughter to Tampa. I said, who do you want to meet? She said, Ndamukong Kansu. She looked only 4 years old. She want to meet Sue? So I tell Sue, hey, a little girl want to meet you. And after practice, he sat down and talked to her for maybe 20 minutes. And she just chattered. Ndamukong Kansu. It's like, but that's a memory she has for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And the kids, they get to see dad in a different light. They're at work with him, but and I love when kids come to see their dads at work. And I've made a quote before: if you miss a recital, a game, anything to do with your kids, I'll fire your ass. And it goes back to working for Marty, where I was missing some stuff with my son, and I'd actually sneak out. And you could go jogging, but you couldn't leave. Well, I'd go watch him play junior high football, come back to the water all over me like I went 10 miles. and so that part of it was like, there's plenty of time to do the work. Yeah. The kids are going to be gone. You don't get that time back ever. All right. So I remember one of my linebacker coaches came up. I said, your son playing in the state championship over for the Pee Wees and at ASU? He said, yeah. I said, what are you doing here? Well, Saturday walkthrough. Get your ass out of here. He got there just in time. The son saw him, lit up, had a hell of a game. They won the championship. It's like, wow. And you can't miss that. You can't, for a Saturday walkthrough, shit, you ain't going to teach them nothing anyway. They're hazing the barn, so don't miss that stuff.
Coach, you had this amazing run and obviously winning the Super Bowl. But, for all of us, there comes a point where in your gut you felt like it's time to maybe step away. And just kind of the emotion for you for that, because that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I did it twice. In Arizona, it was totally more. I had my second cancer scare, and had a grandson, and it was a little bit different. I didn't want to miss that stuff, and that scare kind of shook me up. And I tried CBS for a year, and stepping away that time was really hard. But I thought I got over it. And then, when Tampa job opened, Jason being the GM and knowing it was a good young team and all my coaches being available, my son Jake's my agent. He said, Dad, come on, you got this. And I took it as a sign. And my wife, she bought in because we're on the East Coast and close to the grandsons. And it was an easy decision. And then to get back in was just awesome. And then have the years that we had there. But then again, health, it got very, very hard for me to stand on the sideline. I tore my Achilles like the third week of the season, 90% of my Achilles. And so I had those damn high heels on and back pain. I mean, I had to help get undressed after the games. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't know if I can physically do this. I'll do it for one more year. Yeah. And because Tom was going to retire. All right. So I didn't want to hand it over to somebody without a quarterback. So Tom decided to come back. I said, perfect. I can step back and give this thing to Todd, and knowing that he's got a shot. He's got a better shot than he had in New York, and it was time for me because one more year wasn't going to do anything anyway. But physically, it got really, really hard. And I can't imagine standing on the sideline for 4 hours now, just with the back I have. But that part you miss,
Yeah.
And when I started sitting on the bench during games, I knew it was time.
Yeah.
I sneak over and talk to the quarterback just so I could sit down.
Well, Coach, I'm gonna tell you something, man. You had an amazing career. You should be extremely proud. And but like I've said, man, I the people that I know that know you, never one time it's a negative word, never. And it just says a lot about you as a person. So I just want to thank you, man. Thank you for coming on my show. This has been fun, and so much respect for you, Coach. A lot. So thank you.
I feel like I already knew you because paths have been close a few times.
They have a couple times.
And Steve's been talking about you forever too. So great talk to you, Mark, and God bless you, brother.
All right, Bruce. Thank you so much, Bruce Arians.
You bet.